The drawer hung open like a wound that wouldn't close, papers spilling out under the harsh glare of the office lights. I froze in the doorway, my coffee cup still steaming in my hand, as three auditors in crisp suits rifled through Victor's desk with the precision of surgeons dissecting a body. They wore those thin latex gloves, the kind that screamed evidence rather than routine check. Victor's chair was shoved aside, his monitor dark, and the air hummed with unspoken accusations. One of them, a woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a clipboard, glanced up at me briefly, her expression flat, unreadable. "Standard compliance sweep," she muttered, but her voice carried an edge, like she was reciting lines from a script she didn't believe. Victor appeared moments later, stepping into the room with that measured gait of his, the one that always made you feel like time itself bent to his will. He carried a brown paper bag from the deli downstairs, the faint scent of roast beef wafting through the tension. He didn't rush, didn't demand explanations. Instead, he set the bag down on the edge of his desk, unfolded a napkin with deliberate care, and pulled out his sandwich. His eyes flicked to the open drawer, lingering on a slim blue folder peeking out from under a stack of old expense reports. It was labeled in his neat handwriting, "Anomaly Log, Q2 Security Breaches." I knew that folder wasn't supposed to be there, not in plain sight.
Anyway.
But Victor had placed it just so, buried enough to seem forgotten, visible enough to be found. The auditors paused. One of them, a lanky guy with a buzz cut, reaching for the folder like it might bite. He flipped it open, his brows knitting as he scanned the pages. The room grew quieter, the only sound the rustle of paper and the distant hum of the AC. Victor took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly, his face a mask of calm indifference. But I could see the faint tightening around his eyes, the subtle satisfaction of a man watching his plan unfold. "Anything interesting?" he asked, his voice low and even, laced with just enough amusement to unsettle them. The buzz-cut guy froze, his breath catching as if he'd stumbled into a minefield. This wasn't about misplaced staplers or outdated software. This was a reckoning, and Victor had orchestrated it all without lifting a finger in the moment. It had started months earlier, when Elena swept into the office like a force of nature, her high heels clicking against the linoleum with the confidence of someone who'd never known defeat. She was the new director of operations, fresh from a top-tier business school, with a resume that read like a blueprint for corporate conquest. Dark hair pulled into a sleek bun, tailored blazer hugging her frame. She introduced herself in the all-hands meeting with a smile that promised efficiency and innovation. "We're here to streamline, to modernize," she said, her words sharp and polished. But beneath the charisma, there was a hunger, a relentless drive to reshape everything in her image, no matter who got trampled. Victor had been the backbone of the compliance department for over 2 decades. His systems were the invisible threads holding the company together, audit protocols he designed from scratch, risk assessments that had saved the firm millions in fines. He wasn't flashy, no TED Talks or viral LinkedIn posts for him. Just quiet competence, the kind that comes from years of grinding through the details others ignored. Elena saw him differently, as a relic, a barrier to her vision of agile processes and data-driven dashboards. She started small, rerouting reports through her new analytics platform, one that prioritized flashy visuals over raw accuracy. "Legacy methods are holding us back," she'd say in meetings, her eyes sliding past Victor like he was already obsolete. The first real clash came during a budget review. Elena was pitching her overhaul, charts glowing on the screen, promising reduced overhead and faster turnaround. Victor sat in the back, nursing his black coffee, silent until she claimed her model had caught every anomaly in the last quarter. He cleared his throat then, his voice steady but firm. "Actually, it missed 3 flagged transactions in April, One's tied to vendor overrides. Your algorithm skips batch reconciliations after 5 p.m. The room went still. Elena's smile faltered for a split second, a crack in her armor. She recovered with a laugh. We're iterating on that, but her eyes narrowed, marking him as a threat. From there, it escalated quietly, insidiously. Invites to key meetings vanished from his calendar. Access to shared drives was restricted under the guise of security hardening. Junior analysts were tasked with reviewing his work, their feedback laced with Elena's influence. We need more transparency, she'd email, demanding detailed breakdowns of protocols he'd owned solo for years. Victor confided in me once. Over lukewarm vending machine coffee. She's not building, she's dismantling, he said, his tone more analytical than bitter. I asked if he was worried. He paused, staring into his cup. Worried?
No. Prepared?
Always. That's when I realized he wasn't just enduring her siege, he was mapping her weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to turn the tables. The turning point was subtle. A calendar entry that appeared innocuous at first. Ops workflow audit, led by Team B. Victor's name was nowhere on it. His long-standing role erased with a few keystrokes.
He didn't protest.
Didn't storm into her office. Instead, he started archiving, old-school style. Thumb drives, printed logs, even handwritten notes on chain-of-custody forms. He pulled records from Elena's early days, when she'd fast-tracked a system update without full testing. Glitches ensued, unauthorized logins, data mismatches, all quietly patched but never fully documented. Victor had flagged them initially, but her team buried the reports, claiming transitional noise. He didn't confront her. He preserved. One evening, after hours, he printed a single set of those logs, time-stamped with the old printer's quirks, faded ink, specific margins that no modern machine replicated. He tucked them into that blue folder, labeling it vaguely enough to blend in, and slid it into his bottom drawer. It wasn't revenge yet, it was insurance. A tripwire for when she inevitably pushed too far. And she did, with a memo requesting full knowledge transfer by end of week. Her way of signaling his obsolescence. Victor smiled faintly as he read it, then got to work encrypting backups, 3 sets, stashed in secure spots, home safe, a friend's attic, a bank deposit box. He wasn't paranoid, he was precise. Because in corporate wars, evidence wasn't just power, it was survival. As the auditors huddled over the folder that afternoon, their faces paling with each page, I felt the air thicken. The woman with the glasses whispered, "These deletions, they're tied to her credentials." Buzzcut Guy's hands shook as he cross-referenced. Victor finished his sandwich, crumpled the wrapper, and leaned back, his expression unchanging. He had let them find it, knowing the search was Elena's doing, a final power play to uncover some dirt on him. Instead, they'd unearthed her own burial ground. The calm in the room wasn't peace, it was the eye of the storm. And Victor was its unyielding center. The auditors exchanged glances, the weight of the blue folder settling over them like a shroud. The woman with the glasses closed it slowly, her gloved fingers lingering on the edge as if afraid to let go.
This
needs to go upstairs, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Buzzcut nodded, tucking the folder under his arm like a live grenade. They packed up quickly after that, their earlier method fading into hurried motions. Victor watched them leave without a word, then turned back to his monitor, fingers tapping the keys as if nothing had transpired. But I saw the subtle shift in his posture, the faintest relaxation of his shoulders. Like a coiled spring finally released. Words spread through the office like smoke under a door. By mid-afternoon, whispers filled the hallways. Something big in compliance. Elena's involved. No one dared ask Victor directly. His desk had become a no man's land, radiating quiet authority. He fielded a few emails. Routine stuff. But his mind was elsewhere, on the chain reaction he'd ignited. Elena appeared in the break room around 3 p.m., her usual poise intact. But there was a tightness to her smile, a forced casualness as she poured coffee. She didn't glance toward Victor's cubicle, but I caught her eyes darting to her phone every few minutes, waiting for the fallout. It hit by 4 p.m. An urgent meeting invite pinged across select inboxes. Legal, HR, senior execs. Elena's name was on the list. Victor's wasn't. But he knew it was coming. He spent the interim organizing his files, deleting nothing, just aligning everything for easy access. When the HR rep approached his desk, her face neutral but eyes wide, she said simply, "They need you now." Victor stood,
Smoothed his tie.
and followed her to the elevator. The ride up was silent, the floors ticking by like a countdown. The conference room was stark, with a long oak table and chairs that creaked under weight. Two men waited, the general counsel, sharp-suited and silver-haired, and the VP of risk management, in a rumpled button-down that spoke of long hours. They gestured for Victor to sit, their expressions a mix of caution and curiosity.
Mr.
"Harlan," the counsel began, "we've reviewed the materials from today's audit. They raise concerns." Victor nodded, letting them steer. He knew the logs inside out, Elena's rushed implementation, the skipped verifications, the subsequent cover-ups. Each entry bore her digital signature, timestamps unalterable. The VP leaned forward. "Why keep this offline? Standard protocol is to report through channels."
Victor met his gaze steadily.
"I did report initially. It was dismissed as noise. Then the records vanished from the system. I preserved a hard copy to maintain integrity. Under SOX Section 802, destroying audit trails is a felony." The room chilled. They knew he was right. Victor had cited the law verbatim, his voice calm but laced with the gravity of truth. The counsel cleared his throat. "This implicates leadership. We'll need your full cooperation discretion." Statements. He slid over an NDA form. Victor didn't sign immediately. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This contains my notarized affidavit, device logs, and backup timestamps. Copies are secured externally. If this blows back on me, it goes to regulators." It wasn't a bluff. He'd prepared it weeks ago, anticipating this exact pivot. The men exchanged looks, the power dynamic shifting. They weren't dealing with a disgruntled employee. They were facing a fortress of evidence. "What do you want?" the VP asked finally. His tone edged with resignation. "Her removal," Victor said plainly. "No reassignment. No golden parachute. And a clean record for me. No retaliation." Silence stretched,
Thick and heavy.
They nodded eventually, promising to handle it. Victor signed the NDA then, but only after adding a clause for mutual protection. He left the room with the same measured steps, the weight of victory settling in not as elation, but as quiet vindication. Back at his desk, he resumed work, but the office felt different, charged, like the air after a thunderstorm. By morning, the cleanup was underway. Elena arrived early, her stride less assured, clutching her laptop like a shield. At 10 a.m., security flanked her office door. No drama, just efficiency. Badge deactivated, files locked, escort to the exit. She passed Victor's desk on the way out, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting second. Shock, fury, defeat all mingled there. He didn't gloat, he simply nodded, a subtle acknowledgement of the game's end. Whispers turned to murmurs. She tried to push him out. He had proof all along. Victor's access was restored overnight. His reports once again staples in exec briefings. No fanfare. Just the quiet restoration of order. But the real change was deeper. Colleagues started seeking his input. Not out of obligation,
but respect.
"Run this by Victor," became the refrain. He didn't seek the spotlight. He returned to his routines. The blue folder now archived in a secure vault. Yet, in quiet moments, he'd pause, reflecting on the fragility of ambition unchecked. Elena's downfall wasn't just personal. It exposed the cracks in a system that rewarded flash over substance. And as the office hummed back to normal, Victor carried the lingering question: how many more like her were out there, waiting to be unmasked? The days following Elena's exit blurred into a rhythm of cautious normalcy. The office tiptoeing around the void she'd left. Desks were rearranged. Her projects quietly shelved or reassigned. But the undercurrent of unease lingered, like the faint scent of ozone after lightning. Victor dove back into his work, his fingers flying over keyboards as he rebuilt protocols Elena had dismantled. But he felt the eyes on him, the subtle nods from coworkers who'd once dismissed him as outdated. "Good to have you back in the loop," one said in passing. But Victor knew it wasn't a return, it was an ascension, earned through shadows rather than spotlights. He started noticing the small shifts, emails from upper management requesting his expert review on new initiatives, access codes upgraded without request. Even the IT team looped him in on system updates, a courtesy long forgotten. Victor didn't revel in it. He analyzed, always one step ahead. Late one evening, as the building emptied, he sat alone under the dim desk lamp, poring over old logs, not for nostalgia, but vigilance. Elena had been a symptom, he realized, of a broader rot, the corporate churn that favored disruptors over guardians. Flashbacks haunted those quiet hours. He remembered her first major push, a streamlined compliance dashboard rolled out amid fanfare.
Sleek interfaces.
Real-time metrics. But Victor had spotted the flaws immediately: vulnerabilities in data encryption, overlooked reconciliation gaps. He'd emailed a detailed critique. Polite but pointed. Her response was curt: "Appreciate the input. We're iterating." Then the flags started vanishing from the system. Scrubbed clean. Victor had acted then, printing the originals on his home setup, away from prying networks. It was instinct, honed from years of watching empires crumble on overlooked details.
Now,
with her gone, the company initiated an internal review, a formality to tie loose ends. Victor was called in again, this time to a brighter room with windows overlooking the city skyline. The same council and VP, but joined by the CEO, a rare sighting. His presence underscoring the stakes. "Your materials were instrumental," the CEO said, his tone measured. "We've avoided a potential regulatory nightmare." Victor nodded, but his mind raced. They weren't thanking him. They were assessing liability. He laid out the facts again. Emotionless. A timeline of events backed by his affidavits. The meeting stretched, probing his methods. "Why not escalate sooner?" the council asked. Victor paused, choosing words like chess moves. Escalation requires trust in the chain. When that breaks, preservation becomes duty. They pressed for details on his backups, but he deflected gently, citing confidentiality. By the end, they offered a promotion, senior advisor role, with a bump in pay. Victor declined politely. "I prefer the trenches," he said. "That's where the real work happens." They accepted. But he saw the wariness in their eyes. He wasn't just an employee anymore. He was untouchable, a living archive of their vulnerabilities. Back in the office, life pulsed onward. A new hire filled Elena's role. a mild-mannered veteran from a rival firm who sought Victor's guidance from day one. "Heard you're the guy who knows where the bodies are buried," the newbie joked. Victor smiled faintly. "Only the ones that matter." But beneath the banter, doubts crept in. Had he crossed a line? Planting the folder wasn't fabrication, it was revelation. Yet the ethics nod. Was justice served? Or vengeance cloaked? He pushed it aside, focusing on audits. But the question simmered. One afternoon, a package arrived at his desk, anonymously sent, containing a USB drive. No note, just files, Elena's post-departure resume, her frantic job search emails. It was petty, perhaps from a disgruntled ex-colleague, but it humanized her, the ambition that drove her to desperation. Victor deleted it without viewing, but the act stirred reflection. Corporate ladders were slippery, greased by egos and oversights. He'd won, but at what cost to his own soul? As weeks turned to months, Victor's routine solidified, but the office dynamic evolved. Teams collaborated more, silos crumbling under the shadow of the scandal. He mentored quietly, sharing wisdom without fanfare. Yet, in solitary moments, he'd stare at his empty drawer, remembering the blue folder's weight. It wasn't pride he felt, but a haunting vigilance. Power unchecked breeds monsters, and guardians like him were the fragile barrier. What if the next threat came from within? The question lingered, unanswered, as the city lights flickered outside his window. The scandal's ripples extended beyond the office walls, seeping into boardroom discussions and hushed industry chats. Victor heard fragments, Elena blacklisted from top firms, her name whispered as a cautionary tale. He didn't seek updates, they found him anyway, through LinkedIn notifications and casual mentions at conferences. Smart move. Keeping that log, a peer said over drinks at a compliance summit. Victor shrugged. Just doing the job. But inside, the victory tasted bittersweet, laced with the isolation of one who'd seen too much. He threw himself into enhancements, redesigning protocols to prevent future blind spots. Late nights blurred into early mornings, his home office a fortress of screens and stacks. His wife noticed the change, the distant look in his eyes. "You won,
Vic."
"Let it go," she urged one evening, her hand on his shoulder. He paused, staring at the glowing monitor. "Winning isn't the end, it's the beginning of watching your back." She sighed, understanding his world of shadows and safeguards. A new challenge emerged, an internal probe into broader system flaws, sparked by his revelations. Victor was consulted extensively, his input shaping reforms. But during one session, a young analyst, echoing Elena's energy, questioned his methods. "Isn't this overkill? We need agility." Victor felt a chill, the cycle threatening to repeat. He responded calmly, citing precedents. But later,
Alone.
he fortified his archives anew. Trust was earned, not assumed. Memories of Elena resurfaced unbidden. Her confidence dried, the way she'd dismantled teams with a smile. Victor wondered about her now, starting over, perhaps humbled, or plotting anew. He didn't hate her. Pity edged his thoughts. Ambition without ethics was a blade that cut both ways. In quieter moments, he'd reflect on his own path, the years of loyalty, the quiet battles won in obscurity. Had he become the very relic she'd accused him of being? Or something more, a sentinel? The company stabilized. Profits up. Morale steadier. Victor received a quiet commendation, a plaque gathering dust on his shelf. Colleagues treated him with deference, but friendships remained surface level. His aura of untouchability isolated him. One Friday, after a grueling audit, he sat in the empty office, the hum of fluorescence his only company. He pulled out an old photo from his wallet, him and his first boss. Mentors in a bygone era. Integrity over expedience, the man had taught. Victor nodded to the memory, but doubt crept in exposing her. Had he upheld that? Or twisted it? As seasons shifted, Victor mentored more, passing torches without relinquishing his. A promotion offer came again. This time, he considered it, but declined. Power wasn't his goal, protection was. Yet the ethical quandary persisted. Was his trap justice? Or manipulation? The answer eluded, leaving a haunting echo in his quiet victories.
With time,
The office transformed, Elena's shadow fading into legend. Victor became the unspoken oracle, consulted on crises, his word carrying weight. But success brought solitude. He ate lunches alone, pondering the cost. One day, a whistleblower email arrived, an anonymous tip on executive overreach. Victor verified, preserved, but hesitated. Another trap, or genuine duty? He chose transparency, escalating through channels, watching the fallout from afar. The experience reframed his past actions. Elena's downfall had been inevitable. Her flaws self-inflicted. He'd merely illuminated them. Yet the power to orchestrate lingered as a double-edged sword. In conversations with his wife, he'd admit, "I wonder if I played God." She'd counter, "Or guardian." The duality haunted, a moral fog he navigated daily. Years later, at a retirement gathering, not his, but a colleague's, stories circulated. Victor's tale resurfaced. Mythologized, the quiet hero who fell to Titan. He smiled politely, but inside, questions swirled. Does justice demand deception? Where does vigilance end and paranoia begin? As he drove home under starlit skies, the road ahead stretched uncertain. Corporate worlds spun on fragile axes, and guardians like him bore the weight. The lingering doubt wasn't regret, but a profound query. In protecting the system, had he preserved his humanity, or sacrificed it? The answer hung unresolved, a whisper in the wind.